So, let's talk about the Rings of Power. Let's just talk about it. Have my Papa John's cup. Papa John himself gave it to me. We are lovers in the night. Recently, Amazon Prime released the first 2 episodes of their new Lord of the Rings prequel, Rings of Power. And boy howdy, were people mad. I watched the first 2 episodes. I watched the first episode on Thursday, and then I just recently finished the second episode. It's a show. I'll say that. It's definitely a show. People are very divided. Rightfully so. People love being divided on things. So I just want to talk about Rings of Power and why.
Why?
Why is it doing so bad? Well, I'll tell you why it's doing so bad. It's because it doesn't know how to market itself. The thing with prequels, that will always be the thing, is that you gotta be careful. Prequels are a very dangerous place to be treading, I feel, when it comes to making movies and TV shows and other pieces of media. Just because when you are making a prequel and you already have an established sequel to that prequel out, you already have an established fan base that is going to watch the prequels. But you also have this obligation to appeal to a new audience with the prequel who has not watched the now sequel to the prequel you're making. Is this making sense? I feel like I'm speaking nonsense and I'm saying prequel and sequel a lot. Let's just use Lord of the Rings for an example. When the Lord of the Rings trilogy came out, it was the first major mainstream version of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it was amazing. And so what did we do about 10 years later? We made The Hobbit. The Hobbit movies did not do as well as the Lord of the Rings movies for obvious reasons, and that's just the thing with prequels. Sometimes you gotta let them age, just like Star Wars. People at the time did not like the Star Wars prequels, and now they are a fine wine, a fine delicacy. So the thing with the Hobbit prequel to The Lord of the Rings is that it did a really good job with something, which you can disagree that it did a good job with this. That is fine. It appealed to a large amount of people. When you make a prequel, I wholeheartedly believe the whole point of making a prequel is to introduce a new generation, a new audience to that pop culture series that you are making a prequel of. So the whole point of making The Hobbit, I like to think, was to introduce this new generation about a decade later to Lord of the Rings again. The Hobbit did not alienate a new audience, but it also did not alienate its old audience. When I sat down to watch The Hobbit, I had just got done watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So when I went into watching The Hobbit, I had 2 things on my side. One, I had just gotten done watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy and had that fresh in my mind, though I didn't know about the books. I knew the books existed, obviously. I just hadn't read the books yet. And 2, I had read The Hobbit, though it was a really long time ago. About a decade ago, so I only really remembered very key moments, which was basically just the pinecone scene, really. That was basically the only thing I remembered from The Hobbit. So going into The Hobbit, I had a little bit of an advantage. However, I was kind of in the middle of this playing field. I wasn't a totally new fan who had never ever consumed anything Tolkien related before. However, I wasn't an expert fan, and looking back at The Hobbit and rewatching it and thinking it over during this video, I realized it actually did a really good job playing to every side of its audience, from the people who had never seen anything Lord of the Rings, to the people who were die-hard Lord of the Rings fans, to the little old me in the middle who just really wanted to see long-haired, blonde Orlando Bloom. So what The Hobbit did very well was introduce some new characters and make sure that people knew what the fuck was going on. It also played to the people who had already seen Lord of the Rings and knew a lot. And that's what I appreciate about when people make sequels, prequels to an existing thing that is so popular, is that when you sit down and watch it and you had watched all of it that you could, you can go, oh my gosh, I understood that reference.
I understood that reference.
And that was what The Hobbit did really great, where they had these little references. Also ones that may have pissed you off. Fan service is very touch and go, because sometimes you love the fan service, and other times you do not be loving the fan service.
Melon does not like what she be smelling.
Because it is either being shoved down your throat, it is fan service for characters or plot points that you do not care for. There can be a lot of reasons why you don't like fan service. It feels out of place, it feels forced. It feels kind of like a marketing scheme, which it is. You know how they got some people's asses into those theater seats? But the thing with the Hobbit movies is that it's so easy to get into them. Even people who had not seen the original Lord of the Rings trilogy or didn't really know a lot about Lord of the Rings could sit down, watch The Hobbit, and understand what was going on. It did not expect you to know everything. And that is what a great prequel does. It's not there to just cater to existing fans. It is there to gain a new audience as well. It gave a little nod to Gimli, Legolas was there. It gave a little nod to Aragorn, Legolas was there. It had Elijah Wood in the very beginning scene for 5 seconds. Legolas was there! And that is what's important. And I think that was why it didn't fail as much as it probably would have. And isn't that what this is all about in the end, is introducing new people to things you like, things that mean a lot to you. So now that I've established what The Hobbit did right in making a prequel, let's talk about Rings of Power. Rings of Power, I feel, is doing the exact opposite of what The Hobbit did, in that it is alienating everyone. Nobody wants to watch this fucking show. The Hobbit movies was very open to new viewers as well as old fans, whereas Ring of Power is kind of just locking the gates for both parties. I still have no idea what's going on. Maybe I'm stupid. So this is the problem with it, is that it is alienating people who know Lord of the Rings, and it is definitely alienating people who don't know Lord of the Rings. See, the thing with Rings of Power, I think, is that it expected everyone who was watching Rings of Power to have already known everything there is to know about Lord of the Rings. This is not this is the second, season of a show. No, it's the first season of a show, a new show. I'm not saying that all media needs to be dumbed down to be appreciated, obviously. I don't think that. The whole point, like I said before, of a prequel is to allow a new audience to experience it. And how are you going to get a new generation of audiences into that series if you just expect everyone to have been a Tolkien scholar watching this? Because what you have done is, while catering this show to longtime viewers, you have also made them not want to watch it. Because you have made a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of things wrong, lore-wise. Congratulations, Amazon Prime, you have alienated the entire demographic that you are catering towards. You did it. You fucking did it. Congratulations. And I think that's why it's struggling. It's not just that reason. I do not think that that is the only reason Rings of Power is struggling, but I think it is a very main core reason. They need to explain things more. And I know that can be boring for someone who already knows the lore, but it is going to leave a lot of people who are new viewers very confused. If I had not watched Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and had known a little bit about some of the lore, I would be totally lost. Who the fuck is Galadriel? Who the fuck is Elrond? Who the fuck is this guy? Who the fuck is that guy? Many of the characters too, I just don't know. I don't know them. I've never heard their names before. I had to Google a family tree. This feels like a homework assignment watching Rings of Power. I think that's why a lot of the reviews are bad, because old fans don't like it and new fans don't like it. Like I said, I think there's a lot of reasons why Rings of Power isn't working out. And there are a lot of bad reasons for people to not like it and a lot of good reasons for people to not like it. Some people don't like it because there is black people in it. That's not a good reason to not like it. That's a terrible reason to not like this show. I think it's great that we're putting more diversity into Tolkien. I do appreciate it's doing more with female characters. Tolkien did have a really big problem writing strong female characters, and it definitely shows watching Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, because there is no women in it. See, there are good things. We're doing good things here. It's just the execution is not very good. Is Rings of Power a good show? I don't know. We're only 2 episodes in. I can say there are lots of perks to the show. The cinematography is great. The fact that we have a more diverse cast is great. However, these are all overshadowed by the fact that just the way it is structured is not working, and it's not going to work. Sometimes I think making a prequel is a lot harder than making an entirely new original concept, because you have to make sure that the old audience watches it, but you also have to make sure the new audience watches it. Like I said, The Hobbit did a pretty good job doing this, and I think that is solely based on the fact that Peter Jackson worked on them. Am I going to finish watching Rings of Power? Probably. Is it because I'm completely starved for Lord of the Rings content? Yeah, probably. Do I think it's going to get better? Maybe. Do I think it's going to be as big of a hit as the original trilogy was? Absolutely not. Anyway, that was kind of my first thoughts on Rings of Power and how it's probably not going to work out. Sad to say, it probably won't work out. I really wanted it to work out. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. And if you'd like, turn on that bell notification to get notifications when I update next. If you have any opinions about Rings of Power show that you want to share, maybe you really like it, maybe you really hate it, maybe you entirely disagree with my statements, maybe you entirely agree with my statements, please comment them down below. I love reading comments. I have a podcast. It's a new podcast. It's called Burning the Midnight Celluloid. So check it out. Link in the description for the YouTube channel that I will upload the podcast to. Anyway, I'm gonna go and